hold these truths to be self-evident.
That all men are created equal.
As a member of Congress, I get to have a lot of really interesting people in the office. Experts on what they're talking about.
This is the podcast
for insights into the issues.
China, bioterrorism, Medicare for all. In-depth discussions.
Breaking it down into simple terms. We hold
these truths. We hold these truths.
With Dan Crenshaw.
The Eagle has landed.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Today, I want to highlight one of the biggest issues in our economy right now, which is the restaurant business, and it's one of the hardest hit. It's the first on the chopping block when we tell people to not gather in two places, and restaurants are hurting badly. And to help us with that conversation, I brought in a Houston-renowned chef, Chris Shepard. Chris, thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'll just read a little bit about you real quick. You're an award-winning chef. You've helped change the landscape of the Houston culinary scene since opening Underbelly in 2012. You buy local. You draw inspiration and from culture all around the city. It's really cool to go into your restaurants. And let's see, you've won a bunch of awards. You've got a cookbook out, Cook Like a Local, flavors that will change the way you cook and see the world. And you've got an amazing foundation called Southern Smoke. You donated more than $1.8 million to those in the food and beverage industry in crisis and to the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. You've been on Jimmy Kimmel. So why were you on Jimmy Kimmel? How did that turn out?
To talk about the book.
Yeah.
Really.
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. Well, that's cool. You were on CBS this morning, I'm assuming, for the same thing?
Yes.
Okay. So what is that book about? And what does it have to do with Jimmy Kimmel and late night comedy?
So Cook Like a Local is basically understanding where you live. It's not so much people talk about locality as far as food goes. We talk about locality as far as like your neighborhood, your surrounding areas, who's living around you. How can you learn from that? How can you cherish that? How can you be a part of it? Mm-hmm. And so it really draws from the inspiration of Houston, and it's a love letter to Houston, but more so to the country.
That's
and
awesome.
Where we're at as people.
Did you grow up here?
I've been here for like 27 years at this point. I grew up in Tulsa.
Okay.
I learned almost everything here in Houston.
Yeah. We maybe we should buy your book and actually start cooking. I mean, we never have time. My schedule's so insane. So
that's how it always works.
Yeah,
you know?
it is. It really is. There's a lot of people cooking at home now. So
yeah.
Maybe, I think cookbooks should probably be flying off the shelves. So let's get right into it, though. I mean, the restaurant industry is in deep pain right now. What's your typical profit margin on a restaurant? It's not high.
No, it's not. I mean, it was funny before this. Like, someone was like, "You guys should be all right? Like your margins are giant, and your stress level is really low." And I was like, I think you have that exactly the opposite.
Yeah,
really. Yeah.
Wrong business.
Margins are very low and stress levels are very high. So, and that's just part of it.
So why do you even get into a restaurant business? You love it.
Love it. Yeah. I don't mind it. I love it. I don't want to stop doing it.
But it is high stress, and it's not like you just have this rainy day fund. No businesses do. I think that's what we're learning right now. I hear this from the more populist left and the populist right, that businesses should just be prepared for this, and if they fail, they fail. Well, that's just not how a business works. No business.
The worst idea I've ever heard.
Right. Nobody just has capital just waiting because why would you? That's actually a bad business decision. I mean, You should be spending that on either hiring more people or investing it. You shouldn't just keep it away. And so businesses are failing, left and right. And the restaurant industry was the first because we told people to stop going to restaurants. It's a quick way to make a business fail is to tell people to stop going.
It was a hard thing to hear, but it was the right thing to hear.
Yeah, and that'll be that way for the foreseeable future. But I always remind people a lot of restaurants are still doing takeout, and I'm constantly trying to order out, and Uber Eats is still working.
Yeah, the thing with those kind of systems is that if they're not waiving their fees, it's really hard because they take 25 to 30% from the restaurant right off the bat.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that's generally like if you're talking about margins on restaurants are like 20% if you're really good at what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so when you're taking that 35% hit or 30% hit, that's really hard. Like you're breaking even. Why are you doing it?
Right.
I have a hard time justifying. And maybe it's numbers. It's a numbers game. Like the more you do, the better you do. Like, but I just. For me personally, to put my food into a third-party carrier,
I see.
is really hard to, like, are they okay? Like, I don't know the driver.
Yeah.
I haven't like screened him to be like, how you feeling?
Yeah.
Like, and you're
That's
just
true.
taking it at trust and at face value. And so, like, for me, it's a decision not to do that.
Yeah. Okay. So it's good to know too, to help your local restaurant industry. Takeout means actually going to the restaurant and taking out, or see if they do delivery.
We changed our entire system.
Yeah.
Like, when this happened, I changed over our entire computer system so that it was easier for the guests to order online, and they have a delivery window or a pickup window that they show up. If it says you pick 5:15, at 5:15 we have the food ready for you, and there's one of our wait staff or one of our managers walks out with it, gloves on, puts it in your car, bye, see you later. There's no signing a check, there's no interaction, you've already paid, it's gone.
Right. But even then, the business is down by huge margins, I'm assuming.
85%.
Jeez.
I mean, we're from 4 restaurants down to 1. Like, I've put I've closed each one of the restaurants and taken all the managers and put them into one restaurant to just be able to do this. And we're running 2 shifts, 4 days on, 4 days off, so that we keep 2 teams, everybody healthy.
Yeah.
So if somebody on one team gets sick, the other team steps in completely.
So how confident are you that, if we really did get back to normal within a matter of weeks or a couple months, that you can reopen those restaurants and get back up and running?
I mean, we hope for the best, right?
Yeah.
I think we'll be all right. I mean, because we're doing what we're doing, but will everybody? I don't know. I mean, it's still like at the end of it, like nobody knows.
Yeah.
All of the funding is supposed to start happening, but nobody's sure how it works, and like how is that going to work with every restaurant? And it's going to be an interesting thing. Well,
loans started today. We are recording this podcast on Friday, April something. What is it?
It's 3rd?
Yeah,
April 3rd.
Like
So I don't even know.
Friday, April 3rd. And the loans started out today. They are going out. I encourage everybody to go to their community bank and start that conversation immediately. There was a lot of issues with the rollout that those got worked out rather quickly. The Treasury has been very responsive to these things. So, the entire goal is to give you these loans that are forgivable.
Yeah,
and,
it's awesome.
And small businesses like yours would certainly be eligible, because we just got to maintain payroll. That's the entire goal. We want to be up and running as soon as we're done with this. What does done look like with the pandemic? I'm not exactly sure yet, but I do know that keeping the economy closed indefinitely is impossible.
Yeah, you can't do it.
Yeah, we have had 10 million unemployed over the past couple of weeks, and that should be a stark reminder that you can't just keep everybody at home and hope for the best. That there's massive consequences to this economic downturn that you can't just ignore. It's a separate conversation, but I become frustrated with this sort of black and white view of how to do it. At a certain point, we have to risk mitigate. I mean, you can imagine scenarios where restaurants can open again, but you have to set up your tables differently and keep people at a certain distance at all times. I mean, there's ways to mitigate risk, just like we mitigate risk in every other way.
Yeah. I think Houston's in a very different place too. Is that once we are past this, we still have an oil crisis that is going to affect our city.
Yeah, working on that one too.
Yeah, and that's hard, and it's if your oil's in the tank, is it a low barrel cost, like people don't go out. And
right.
So we're already at a point where people aren't going out, and then when we get through this and people are going to want to go out, well, we still can't do that.
Right.
So we'll see how it all works out.
That's the other thing that people, the naysayers and critics forget. That's a kind word for them. They're happy to help a small business, right? They for some reason they attach some kind of moral imperative to that. Like, well, it's a small business, so they're good people. But the big businesses and the oil businesses, those are bad people. Yeah, well, you buy all their products, so it's total. It is a circle, and guess what? They are customers. They're also your fellow Americans, and they are also customers at all the small businesses. And all business owners, I think, intrinsically understand this when you talk to anybody who's in business. But it's frustrating when the Twitter mob doesn't understand that, and when my colleagues in Congress certainly don't understand that. Like the economy is fundamentally a system of money transfer, and when you stop allowing money to transfer, you destroy the economy fundamentally. All parts of it. Like there isn't like a like a good side of the economy, the good small businesses that just survive. No, it all gets destroyed, and it's fundamental to look at that.
At the end of it, we all just have to come out on top.
So yeah,
that's the key.
And we've got to operate in good faith with each other, which we've been lacking in quite a bit. What other things can we do? So you're pretty familiar with this, with the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, which is the small business loans that are forgivable if they're used for payroll and other expenses like rent and things. What else can we do?
My fear is that not everybody really understands that yet, and calling your banks has been pretty difficult. Depending on what your bank is, and some people say yes, some people say no, some people, everything you talk to it is a little bit differently, and I've got a team working on it, which is really good for me, but smaller businesses are going to have a hard time with it, I think. But we're talking about, it's a 2.5 month turn, right? It's to cover payroll for 2.5 months. But when you look at people right now in our doctor system, our medical system, that they're saying that we are 3 weeks into, for the next 3 weeks is going to be bad. And if we can't get into our restaurants for another month and a half, that's going to be really hard on that, even that 2.5 month. Because at that point, then we still have to have the capital to start a restaurant again. Because you have to buy everything over again. And so I'm hoping that this goes fast, because the 2.5 months is going to cover basically, honestly, a month.
Yeah.
And then we have to open. It's going to be tough if we are just sitting at home not doing anything.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So.
Oh, well, it makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, what you're telling me, and this is good to hear, I think the program works for exactly what it's designed for, to keep people afloat for a couple months. You go beyond that, and we need to have serious conversations about moving from this risk containment strategy to a risk mitigation strategy. What I remind my fellow policymakers of is the reason we're on lockdown is to slow the spread and let our health system catch up. Yeah. And you have to have metrics and give people some predictability on, okay, when is enough? Like when do you have those stockpiles ready? When do you have enough hospital beds? I think we have only a couple hundred people hospitalized in the entire state of Texas. And there's indications that'll continue to rise, and we should listen to that data. But we have to have a balance, and a lot of people are rightfully concerned that we're not striking that balance. That's not my decision to make. It's not your decision to make, but it's got to be a different decision for every city and state, frankly. It's folly to think that what New York is experiencing now is what Houston will inevitably experience. That requires you to believe that we're just like New York, and of course we're not.
No.
We didn't have nearly as many hot spots, international travelers. We don't live on top of each other the way they do in New York. We have to mitigate our risk according to what makes sense for Houston.
I think what we're doing right now is a good system, and it's because there is no playbook for this, right? There's no game plan. Nobody ever said, hey, guess what? This is going to happen. You should probably plan for this. And so we just need to keep doing what we're doing, and people need to practice that social distancing. They don't need to be going to the parks running around with each other and going to the beach. I'm glad that's all getting shut down. It has to. It gets everybody back to work faster. And with us, especially just doing the curbside, we're fortunate that as of yesterday, we started producing meals for HEB. And so we went into 10 stores, and our stuff sold out within minutes. It's what HEB has done for us has been really beneficial. Yeah, because they're giving us the opportunity for what they sell it for is what we make. All right, so everything's $12. They're paying me $12 right off the bat. They're not making a penny on it.
Oh, really?
They're just doing this to help keep us afloat.
That's good.
And by doing that, everybody's like, they set their orders. And they're like, we need 15. We need 15 of everything. Well, then this morning I'm like, I need 75. Of everything. I'm like, look, I have to focus on our supply chain too, because what I don't think they understand is that when we chose the menu that we did for the 5 items, that we were going to help other small businesses in our community by doing this. So Kongju, which is a small Korean family that makes our dumplings for one of our dishes, traditionally makes us 100 pounds a week, right? And they sell to the local grocery stores. They probably do 300 pounds a week. Well, they're making 300 pounds a day for us. So what they're having to go through is a massive uptick just to keep up with what we need to keep up with the grocery stores. So, and after this, I go pick up 500 pounds of short ribs, and I have another 500 pounds of ground Wagyu coming from another small farmer. So the trickle-down effect on this is going to be huge, and what they've done, I can't speak highly enough about this, is helped like my restaurant group and a couple other restaurant groups and more in Texas. And, we'll get it there. I'll get you the 75 of everything, but that's going to take a few days because our supply chain has to come up too.
And that's the interesting part about this. The demand for food has not changed.
No.
It can't possibly have changed, right? Like people didn't just start eating less. That's not what happened. People just chose a different place to get their food from. And so supply chains will be adapting quickly. And that seems to be what you're describing.
Well, because if we don't help the supply chain out, and it goes back to what you said earlier, then everything crumbles.
Yeah.
Right. So if you just stop the demand, we're gone. And
restaurant supply chains are slightly different than a grocery store supply chain. So people might think, well, my restaurants are hurting, but I'm shopping at HEB. But at least the producers are still alive. But that's not really true. You guys use kind of different supply chains, and those need to be adapted. I mean, I'm not sure what policy we could put into place to adapt that, but they need to self-adapt, and so that there's. Because again, the demand is the same.
Even for grocery, it's a totally different system, right? For restaurants and hotels and bars, it's a different system. Like I could before this get a delivery every day, right? If I needed something, I put my order in by 4 o'clock and it'd show up at 10 o'clock the next morning. Now it's 1 to 2 days a week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because their warehouses are pretty much closed because all the the majority of restaurants are closed.
Yeah.
They're just taking a hiatus and waiting for this to go through, and I applaud that as well. But, I have 200 employees. Yeah. And 175 we had to furlough. And so...
Are you going to be able to get them back if you're able... But I mean soon, if you're able to take these SBA loans?
Yeah. I mean, they're not going to come back to work. They're going to stay at home. But
they'll get paid, though.
They're going to get paid, and that's huge.
That's forgiven by this,
Huge. But for us, as this is a conversation that we have on a daily basis. Like, how do we limit our interaction with a guest? Mm-hmm. How do we make sure that we're doing everything as safe as possible? So, like I said, we do 2 teams. We don't let anybody in our building that doesn't already belong there. The 2 teams cannot see each other. They can't come in the building. Mm-hmm. There is no cross contamination of people. Before it was product, now it's people. To make sure that we're keeping as safe as possible. Apron companies started making masks, which is awesome. Right. So I've got those. We're doing everything.
There's a new normal, even if we're back, even if we say, okay, economy's open now, come April 30th. Even if we say that, there is definitely a new normal of operations, and I think we'll find that we can still do all the same things we did before, just not in the way we did them before.
I think the big handshakes and everything are probably going to stop.
Yeah, I no longer have 1,000 handshakes a day. Imagine
no, you're just
that.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah,
wave from 2 feet away, which is great.
And there's just going to be a new normal until this thing basically becomes as bad as the flu eventually. Once we have a vaccine and once we have treatments that we know are effective, then the risk is a little bit less severe. Chris, what other policies can we be looking at to help these small businesses, these restaurants? One thing I'd heard advocated for was basically a holiday on the state tax that restaurants had to pay. Was there any success in getting that through?
No. Not really. Not from what I understand. Hopefully it will in the future. I think that when this all came down and everybody had to close their doors, I think that when you look at when the comptroller sends out there, hey, don't forget to pay your TBC taxes right now. Mm-hmm. Wait a minute. I don't have money to make payroll either. I don't have it's a tight thing. Then little forbearance would be good. Yeah. Rent abatement's good.
When's the next tax payment?
I don't know. I mean, it's going to be pretty low because we've been closed.
Yeah.
I mean,
I guess that's the good news.
Yeah. You don't really, and so it was hard. All of a sudden it's pay your 14% or whatever it is right now. And it's can we do that over the course of a few months? Let us make something because when you're telling, especially bars probably are the worst and it's the hardest hit is that you just have to close. Mm-hmm. There's no to go drive through anything.
Well, we are delivering alcohol now in Texas.
Yeah.
So
but
you got to get creative with your business model.
Yeah, you do.
And again, I don't think people drink less alcohol than they did before. No. They don't consume less food. They don't drink less alcohol.
I find it funny that people come through the thing and just get a bottle of wine. What are you doing with one bottle of wine? Let's be honest. Yeah. Like, that's just before dinner, right? Because you bought the steaks from us. You're going to have to cook it. What are you going to do beforehand?
Yeah. Fair enough. That was some quick thinking by Governor Abbott. Allow that, because I'm assuming the profit margins on selling alcohol are much better than cooking food.
You have to fluctuate, right? You have to make it so that people will. You have to drop prices, right? So for like our wine list, like you can come into Georgia James and you can look at our 150. You can look at our wine list and we'll sell you anything, right?
Yeah,
it's 20% off a bottle, and that gets the more you buy, the bigger the discount.
Yeah,
right. So you have to be crafty. You have to think about what you're doing, because like we're already not making that much money on it, but like it's hard to I don't know. Sometimes when your allocation is like 6 bottles or something, and you're like, I have to give you a discount on that. That's going to be real hard to do.
Yeah.
But it's just maintaining your bottom line and making sure that you have money in the bank. So, I mean, we can sell little half bottles that are sealed, but not everybody makes half bottles.
Yeah.
Of liquor.
Right. You got to get creative.
Yeah, you do. You do.
And that's what the future holds. It's getting creative, and I hope sticking to some timelines and giving our businesses the help that they need to get through this while we basically pause all your operations.
Yeah, I mean, that's every small business, and I think that the thing that we're looking at now, yes, the bill is passed, and there's something that is going to hopefully help all of us out for 2.5 months, but we need to start looking at what happens in a month.
Yeah,
how far are we along? What can we do next? How do we get that going? Because is it 2.5 months? It's like, well, we did 2.5 months. That's all we got. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, so that's where the creativity has to come into play.
Yeah.
Right. Not just throwing money at it is awesome, but the creativity aspect of how do we get back is where our leaders have to start to think.
Right.
Right. How do we be creative and ask businesses, because it can't be so cut and dry.
Right. Well, give you some predictability, I think is extremely important.
Yeah.
So let's move into, I want to talk about your charitable work, just to highlight some good stuff that happens in Houston. So I mean, tell us about that. How did you start Southern Smoke Foundation?
So Southern Smoke was something that we started 5 years ago, and it was a program that I wanted to do to basically do a series of dinners in the restaurant that would, this was before Southern Smoke, I should say. This is kind of the creation of it, that I would raise enough money to put somebody through culinary school. They would have to go through an application process, and then when we found that they worked full time, they went to school full time like I did, that I'd pay for their school.
Yeah,
like you're free ride. Here you go. And I had a guest sommelier come in, Antonio Gianola, who's at Houston Wine Merchant, because I wanted my wine guy to be with his family, because we did it on the days when the restaurants were closed on Sunday. So I didn't want him working the extra day. So I asked one of my old guys that I worked with, hey, do you want to come in and do this? And said, yeah. We did the first 7 dinners, made enough money to put somebody through school, and he came back and he said, hey, are you going to do these dinners again? I said, I don't know why. He's like, well, I was diagnosed with MS this week, so I was wondering if we could do a dinner for MS. And I was like, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to throw a party, because raising $4,000 or $5,000 doesn't make sense. Like, that doesn't help the problem. Like, we have to figure out a solution. We have to raise more money than that. And so it went from I called 3 friends, 3 chefs from around the country. I said, hey, can you come to Houston and do this thing? We'll do 200 people out in the back parking lot. And we'll do Aaron Franklin and I will do Texas cuisine, and Sean Brock and Rodney Scott can do South Carolina cuisine. Cool. And then I was like, we need to shut down the sidewalks. So I had to go to the mayor's office of special events to ask for the permission to do that. And Susan Christensen looked at me and she said, what are you doing? And I told her, and she said, no. We're going to block off all the streets around you. We're going to give you the stage. We're going to give you all the infrastructure to be able to do this. And so it turned into a little party for 200 to a party for 1,000. My goal was to raise $100,000 for the MS Society. And I was told I shouldn't say that. But the same people we called the MS Society like a week, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks before, I was like, we should probably tell them we're doing this. They kind of laughed. They're like, you're going to raise $100,000. I was like, I am. And like, yeah, we hear that all the time. And they kind of laugh. But those same people cried when I wrote them a check for $181,000.
Wow.
And so year 2 comes around. We have more chefs come in. We raised $284,000 that year. Year 3 happens. Harvey happens. We're about a month and a half out, and Harvey comes through and pretty much puts a toll on our city. And so I looked at Lindsay and some of the crew, and I was like, we can't do this for MS this year. We have to figure out a way that we can take care of individuals in our industry and cut them checks. Because I started getting the phone calls like, whose fund do I put money to? And I was like, no fund is going to give anybody in the hospitality money. Like, it's just not going to happen. And so we made a statement that we started working with Legacy Community Health, which is right next door to us, and worked on a program that we could have an application process that went out in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese, and then a verification committee that verified all of what had happened and if they had insurance or not. And then their names were taken off of that and became a number, and then it went to an awards committee. So it was completely like separate. And we wrote 139 checks for $500,000 that year to folks in our industry, in our city. And I was like, I don't care if they stock milk, if they plant the vegetables, if they deliver the wine, if they own a restaurant, if they're a busser, a dishwasher, I don't care. Supply chain on up. And so that sparked a thought process that we needed this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so we've been taking applications and raising money for anybody in the industry that comes in time of crisis, whether it be through mental health, whether it be anything. We've donated anywhere from like $500 to $100,000.
Wow.
We had a gentleman, and I don't ever know. I'm just kind of the spokesperson and the guy that makes the fundraising aspects, but unless the individual wants me to know. And so we had one happen 2 years ago where a gentleman was on his 4th brain surgery after a motorcycle accident, and the insurance company said, you're done, you got to go tomorrow. And his mom was like, what am I supposed to do? And they said, well, you can pay X amount of dollars and put it in a tier, or you can put him into a hospice and watch him pass. And somebody on the floor had just read an article about Southern Smoke, and they said, maybe you should reach out to these people. So within 24 hours, we walked in with a check for $98,000 and put him in tier. He's still around. He's still fighting every day, which is great. That's what we want. But now, more than ever, that we went from 2 employees to 25 in the past 2 weeks. Because during Harvey, we had a little less than 300 applications come in. Right now, we're over 10,000 in 2 weeks. And it's going national. And so it's a Southern Smoke is a foundation that's set up to help people immediately. We don't have a lot of red tape. We don't have a lot of problems. Like, we have a small board. They hammer it out. There's 10 applications a day. So we're deving out anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 a day.
Wow.
To folks in our industry.
Man.
And so, yeah, in the past 2 weeks, we've cut, I think it's like $220,000 to individuals right now.
Jeez.
And every day.
Some serious fundraising.
Every day, yeah. Every day, like the Texans came in and here's $50,000.
Yeah.
Cheetos came in and said, we're going to split $1 million amongst these 4 charities.
Yeah.
Another distillery came in for another $50,000. So, and then it's just the kindness of people and generosity in our city and across the country, that here's $5,000, here's $5, here's $10. Like, it doesn't matter. Everything that comes in helps, because unlike a lot of charity organizations, we're averaging, most people do about 50% of every dollar raised goes to the individual. Right now we're in the low 90s. So we're like 92% of every dollar raised goes to help an individual.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad people like you are out there doing that kind of thing.
Well,
especially now.
It's a big part of our life, and it's a big part of, like I've always said, we take care of our own.
Yeah.
And right now our own is everybody.
Well, that aspect of American life isn't talked about enough. Too many people these days think that anytime something happens, the president should just micromanage it. I mean, it's not even the mayor or governor anymore; it's the president. And we've lost sight of what civic society actually does. We've lost sight of our nonprofit space. We've lost sight of our basic civics lessons on who does what, and that social fabric and sense of community is so important. It's such an integral part of the American spirit. Other countries don't do this. Other countries really do just always look to somebody else to save them, but we don't really do that in America. We have a very unique system. We donate more to charity in this country than, overwhelmingly more than any other country on a per capita basis, on an absolute basis. And I think we should be proud of that.
Absolutely.
What I always find odd is some people will say, oh, they get mad when charity has to do something. Some people will think, well, they shouldn't have to do that. The government should take care of that. And I think why? Because when the government does take care of that, it will be with a lot more red tape. It won't be nearly as efficient. Why is that? I mean, isn't this the most efficient way to help people? You have people who can afford it, give money, and the job gets done. It's always strange to me that actually frustrates some people. And just, I don't think you probably don't hear it. You hear all the good stuff, right? But I'm a politician, so I hear all the bad stuff.
We work as hard as we can to just make sure people are good.
Yeah.
And that's at the end of it. Like, I leave everything else to everybody else to hash out.
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna make sure that we're doing what we have to do to make our industry.
Well, it's much appreciated.
No, thank you.
Well, Chris, thank you for helping us with that and telling us about the restaurant industry and the challenges you face and how we can overcome them.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm fortunate that in our building we have 14 people working in a 10,000 square foot building.
Yeah,
and that's the only way that we're able to do it. If we were a 3,000 square foot restaurant, there's no way we could do this.
Yeah,
and so I fear for all of the restaurants in this city and this country right now.
Well, not without daily testing. I mean, it just goes to show how important it is to, again, adapt to the pandemic while we get back to work.
Yeah.
If you had daily testing, okay, well, I tested negative today going into work. We might be in that reality in the next few months but we have to get the supply chain of testing.
The supply chain's everything right now.
Right.
So